Hello, today I want to talk about egg yolk color. Here in Oklahoma, whenever winter comes, there's nothing really that a chicken can forage on outside the chicken coop. Everything's gone dormant, and so we don't have those grasses and greens and things like that, or even insects that chickens like to graze on. So we know here in Oklahoma that egg yolk color and egg quality suffers a little bit during the winter unless we're able to supplement that. So I've looked into a couple different feeds, and I'm going to do a little test here today to see if either of these feeds have a major impact on egg yolk color, specifically going more and more orange, like we see in this with those summer and spring eggs. So I'm going to test the normal Ag Store feed mill feed. That's a 15% layer pellet that I buy here for $10 a bag for 50 pounds. That I usually supplement my chickens with, and then I let them eat outside during the summer. But we're going to confine them into the coop and feed them only that for a week, and then crack some eggs from those birds and take photos. And then similarly, the next week we're going to mix that feed rather 50-50 with a name brand Purina feed called Layena. Which is touted to have an impact on egg yolk color. We're going to mix that 50-50 and feed them another week, and then we'll crack the eggs again. And then the third week, we're going to do 100% Purina name brand Layena feed, and we'll see what sort of impact that has on the egg yolk. And then fourthly, I'm going to show you how I mix my own supplemental feed to even further impact egg yolk color. Either in the winter or year-round as a supplement. So let's get started here. I'm just going to do this as a slideshow in Illustrator. So first off, these are the two feeds I talked about. This is the 15% egg pellet I get at the feed mill here. It's $10 for 50 pounds versus the name brand being $21 for 50 pounds. It's a major difference. So that's why I did a 50-50 mix of these as a secondary kind of intermediate step to see if there was enough advantage to warrant mixing them. As you can see here, this is, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this nutrient density stuff, but this is the crude protein. It's 15%. And it's higher by 1% in Layena. That's this Purina feed that costs twice as much. But every other nutrient that's considered important for poultry is higher in this $10 per 50-pound bag feed mill pellet. Lysine, methionine, the fat, calcium, phosphorus, they're all higher. The only thing that's not higher is salt. The salt percentage is between 0.1 and 0.6% here. And there's more salt at 0.3% to 0.8% in the Purina Layena. So this is a superior feed in all respects, except for 1% protein. And for the price, it's obviously not a game changer. But what they also tout is that there's added marigold extract, and that gives them a richer yellow yolk. There's the kind of the quick chemistry and science behind egg yolk color is that when chickens graze in the pasture and eat insects and dandelions and things like that, they're going to get a nutrient. It's a fat soluble pigment. They're called carotenoids. Beta-carotene derives from that, and carrots have a lot of carotenoids in them. They are the orange and yellow fat-soluble pigments that we find in nature. Specifically, if they have an oxygen attached to the carotenoid, they're called oxycarotenoids. And specifically within the oxycarotenoids, there's ones called xanthophylls. And xanthophylls are what we find specifically in a chicken's diet during the spring and summer and fall when it's eating grass and it's eating insects and bugs and things like that. That's that fat-soluble pigment that's getting into their digestive tract and then showing up in the egg yolk later. A couple specific xanthophylls you may have heard of are zeaxanthin or lutein. They're also important in the human diet. And we see these coloring corn and coloring fruits and vegetables and insects, marigolds, things like that. So a chicken's diet is pretty much devoid of those during the winter. And so supplementing them with a good feed helps helps that egg yolk have a good, real strong pastured look, like it would during the summer. Okay, so that's, don't want to get too far off topic here. So that's what Purina Layena touts is this marigold extract, and it's going to have xanthophylls in that, and that's going to add that coloration. So anyway, on to the next slide here. These are photos that I took. The feed store 15% pellet, the 15% pellet plus the Purina Layena 50/50, and then the 100%. And then I blew up the medial coloration of the average yolk among the several that I cracked. And as you can see here, this 100% feed store pellet at 15% crude protein and no extracts yielded a pretty good yolk. I've always had good luck with local feed stores mixing a good one. They use alfalfa, and I'm guessing maize in those, and both those ingredients have xanthophylls. And that's why you always end up with a pretty good yolk. Of course, it's going to look a lot better than if you get an egg from the grocery store, especially if it doesn't have any specificity to it at all with what the chicken was fed, if it was pastured, or whether it was organic or anything like that. If it's just your regular white leghorn coming from a huge house, they're going to be fed all kinds of things from feather meal to just as cheap a feed as possible, and those xanthophylls are going to be very, very rare in those feedstuffs. So anyway, at home, this was the 100% 15% crude protein feed store pellet. There wasn't much difference when I went to a 50/50 mix. There was a little bit of a difference when I went to the 100% Purina Layena. We started to get into this nice darker, I should say, egg yolk that we usually associate with a good pastured farm egg. So lastly, what I want to talk about is a place that you might be able to find pigments in natural foodstuffs that you can feed your chickens at a low cost that'll help with that color if you're selling farm eggs and you have to confine your chickens for one reason or another. Maybe you have a backyard flock. Maybe you have a chicken tractor or something like that, and it's winter and they can't get their fill of grazing, or maybe you just have to confine them because you live in town. In that case, supplementing your chickens with a good fat soluble pigment that's natural is going to be a good advantage for you. And I find the cheapest is actually going to be paprika. And paprika you can get online, in 50-pound bags pretty inexpensively, or you can get it at Walmart for 98 cents for the great value you can. If you mix that into a scratch feed at a rate of 1.5 to 2% by weight, it's going to have a major effect on your egg yolks. In fact, here's what happened when I took plain old chicken scratch, super cheap, $7 or $8 for 50 pounds. And I mixed it with paprika. Look at this color I got. So this is after 7 days of feeding that just as a supplement. I was feeding them Purina Layena because I still had a bunch left over, and then I just supplemented on the side in a separate feeder with a 2% paprika by weight mixed into scratch feed. And the way you get that to stick, I've done a video on my barbecue series on antiflocculants and using oils to make dry rubs, and I use the same method here. I would take scratch feed and put it in a big bowl or a 5-gallon bucket, and you want to add about 1 or 2% by weight sunflower oil, soy oil, Wesson cooking oil, whatever's cheap, just a vegetable oil, and mix that into your feed, and it will microscopically coat the outside of all those seeds and wheat kernels and things like that with a microscopic layer of oil. And then when you put your fine dusted paprika, it'll stick to those and it won't fall to the bottom and become separated. And then they can eat that feed and they'll get that natural paprika, which is just a pepper. Think of a red bell pepper that's dried and crushed and ground. That's pretty much what paprika is. You don't buy the Hungarian smoked paprika or anything crazy like that. Just plain old red paprika that we use to color our foods. And then you'll put that in at 1 to 2%. I use 2%. And that's what we got here at a 2% ration. It's a really big difference if you look at the difference in color in these eggs. It really made a big difference. And like I said, it's very inexpensive and it's just really easy to do. So I would recommend not moving to the Purina Layena if you have a good local feed mill. Otherwise, it is a good feed. Purina makes really good feeds, but they're expensive. If you have a very large flock, that'll eat into your budget pretty fast. So I would recommend using a 13, 14, 15% egg crumble or pellet, and then buy yourself a 50-pound bag of chicken scratch, as cheap as you can find. Oil it up with some sunflower or soy oil and dump some paprika in at maybe 2% by weight. Like I say, it's not very expensive. And then you put that in a side feeder as a supplement, and you'll get those pretty orange yolks. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments if you have any other suggestions on how to get those pretty orange yolks when there's nothing for the chickens to graze on during the winter. Thank you.